Today, I'm going to show you how I built this bed frame with built-in book storage for my kids using basic plywood that you can find at your local big box hardware store. For cabinets and furniture, I use 3/4 inch birch, but that's mainly because I have a local lumber yard where I can pick up sheets for around $50. Before I found that place, I typically went with whitewood ply from one of the big box stores. You could go with sanded pine or even industrial particle board if you're really looking to cut costs, but keep in mind that sacrificing the quality may not be worth the savings, especially for something that will see daily use. This build will be for a twin bed, which will need two 8x4 sheets. The first step will be to cut down each sheet of plywood into the pieces for the frame. I'm using a track saw, but fancy tools are not necessary. There are tons of options that will allow you to get straight cuts using only a regular skill saw. I started by cutting the sections for the bookshelf portion of the bed, which consist of 3 equally sized lengths. I'm using the offcuts from the sides for the shelf dividers. This plan creates a 13 inch by 13 inch cubby that will run the length of the bed. The size is tall and deep enough to hold the bigger books in my kids' collection. You could even throw some 10 or 12 inch bins in there if you wanted to use it for storage instead. Next, I drilled pocket holes around each edge of the rear piece. After that, I drilled pocket holes around the front and side edges of the top and bottom pieces. Pocket hole joinery is my preferred method of basic furniture and cabinet assembly because it's a relatively strong connection that takes a low amount of skill and time. If I were making these for someone else, I would add glue and dowels to lower the chances of these pieces failing over time. Since this was my first time making this style of bed, I wanted to leave the door open for potential modifications if something didn't work out how I wanted. I love working with plywood. It's an extremely strong and versatile material, but it does have some unsightly edges. I'm adding some edge banding to the front faces of the shelf dividers to cover that up. This was a visual preference I made for myself and is certainly not required. Edge banding is super easy to apply. It has a heat-activated adhesive that irons straight onto the edge of the plywood. You'll be left with a nice clean edge that gives the appearance of solid wood after you've sanded and cleaned it up. Next, I measured and divided the shelf into 4 equal sections, which will help me line up the partitions during the assembly process. I attached the back and bottom pieces together using 1 1/4 inch pocket screws, making sure that the pocket holes for the bottom length are pointed towards the front. Then I drilled 2 pilot holes on the lines I drew earlier for the shelf partitions. I decided to countersink the screw heads even though they won't be visible when the bed is complete. My goal was to avoid the possibility of anything getting snagged on them during use. I fastened the dividers to the back of the bookshelf using 1 1/4 inch wood screws. Next, I flipped the assembly over and attached the top section. At this point, the whole thing is symmetrical and doesn't really matter which way is up or down. Now we're cutting down the second sheet for the back and sides of the bed frame itself. These consist of simple rectangular pieces that, again, you do not need a table or a track saw to make. I threw some pocket holes into both ends of the short lengths and then attached them to the long side to make a big U shape. I cut 2 thin strips from the remaining scrap that will run across the front of the bed. I set the frame on top of the strips and attached them to the sides. Then I brought over the bookshelf assembly and carefully placed it in position. It's important to take your time here and adjust the bookshelf around as needed to make sure the top and bottom edges of the shelf are lined up with the front strips. Once I was satisfied with the fit, I attached the 2 pieces using all of the remaining pocket holes. After everything was all secure, I cut 2 thin strips for the sides of the bookshelf and then fit them into place. As an optional step, I chose to edge band the opening. Doing this after assembly is a little cumbersome. If I could go back, I would do these pieces before putting it all together. I needed a way to support the mattress across the big opening, so I cut 2 strips that will support removable slats. I attached one to the back of the bookshelf and one to the back of the bed, measuring to make sure they were even in height. Once the mattress goes on, we're still going to be able to see the ply layer on this top edge, which again is fine to leave as is, but I don't really like the rough, unfinished appearance. I found some of this 3/4 inch trim that has a gentle rounded profile that covers up this edge perfectly. It's not the same material as the plywood, just keep in mind that it will take stain differently than the surrounding plywood if you're planning on staining the bed. I'm planning on painting, so it makes no difference for my piece. I attached the trim with glue and brad nails, making sure none of the nails were left sticking out of the top. I used most of the remaining scrap to cut 9 slats that will support the mattress. There's enough room left under here to store a box or 2 of toys or maybe some out-of-season clothes. I gave the entire bed 1 coat of primer and 2 coats of high durability paint. I chose Benjamin Moore Advance, but that's mostly because I had plenty left over from a previous project. You could even leave the bed in the natural wood tone if you wanted to, but I would recommend at least giving it a clear protective coat such as polyacrylic. Finally, it was time to move the bed up into our boys' room. This was a significant challenge as this frame is not light. You definitely need help if you're moving it up or downstairs. And the first bed was so easy to build that I actually made 2 of these, one for each of our kids. The twin size is perfect for them. If you're looking for something a little bigger, like a full or a queen, you could modify the dimensions to make it work. Just keep in mind that it will require more material and may need some alterations, especially when it comes to supporting the mattress. Also, if you already have the mattress you're planning on using, double check its size to make sure it'll fit before cutting down the material. The standard size of a twin is 38 by 75 inches, and I've designed this to accommodate anything up to 40 by 76 inches. We made up the beds with some video game bed sheets, and it was time for the big reveal. These beds turned out awesome, and they've held up really well, which is great because our boys are as crazy as they come.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Bye!